Hey everyone, today we are diving deep into a really fascinating and, let's be honest, often misunderstood part of Western culture. It's this powerful undercurrent of thought that has shaped our history in ways you probably never expected.
So, where do we even begin with something so vast? Well, let's start with some ideas that are probably a lot more familiar to you than you think.
You can probably picture it right now. The classic alchemist, bent over all these bubbling potions and strange devices. But their quest wasn't just about turning lead into gold. No, that was a metaphor. It was this deeply symbolic journey of spiritual purification and transforming the self.
Or how about astrology? For thousands of years, people have looked up at the stars, convinced that the movements of the planets directly influence our lives, our personalities, our destinies. You know the famous phrase, as above, so below.
And of course, you've got the secret societies. Groups like the Rosicrucians or the Freemasons, with all their secret initiations, hidden rituals, and the promise of some kind of profound, hidden knowledge passed down from master to student through the generations.
So you've got alchemy, astrology, secret societies. What in the world connects all these things? I mean, on the surface, they seem pretty different, right? But it turns out they all fall under one really interesting academic umbrella: Western esotericism.
But here is the first big twist in this story. Get this, the alchemists, the astrologers, all the mystics throughout history, they never, ever used that term. They wouldn't have called themselves esotericists. The word itself is actually a pretty modern invention. The French term esotericism didn't even show up until 1828. It was a word created by scholars, basically, looking back in time to try and group together all these different movements that didn't quite fit with mainstream religion or the scientific rationalism that was taking over during the Enlightenment.
The brilliant scholar Wouter Hanegraaff put it perfectly. He said that Western esotericism is a modern scholarly construct. It wasn't some ancient tradition just waiting to be discovered. It's more like a lens that modern historians created to look back and make sense of all these different strands of thought.
So here's the really crucial point. This category often becomes a kind of home for ideas that got pushed to the sidelines. You could say it's the story of rejected knowledge, ideas that were dismissed by both the scientific establishment and mainstream religious authorities.
Okay, so if it's this big bucket for rejected knowledge, how do academics actually try to define it? Well, they've come up with four main ways of looking at it. You can think of them like four different lenses, and each one gives you a totally unique perspective.
So the first lens is the one you'll often hear from the practitioners themselves. It's the idea that esotericism is this single, universal secret wisdom, a kind of perennial philosophy that's been passed down in secret for ages and is the hidden truth at the core of every religion.
Now, the second lens is hugely influential in the academic world, and it comes from a scholar named Antoine Fiver. He argued that esotericism isn't defined by what it's not, but by what it is. He saw it as a unique, enchanted way of seeing the world with 6 key features. It starts with correspondences, that whole as above, so below idea. Then you have living nature, the belief that the entire universe is alive. It relies on imagination and symbols to connect with this living reality. The ultimate goal? Transmutation, or inner spiritual change. And it also assumes a concordance, that all these traditions are connected, and that this knowledge gets passed down through transmission from teacher to student.
The last two lenses are a little more, shall we say, critical. Lens number 3 just sees esotericism as any claim to some kind of secret, higher knowledge. And lens number 4, which we've kind of touched on, basically views it as the Academy's dustbin, just a catch-all category for any idea that didn't fit neatly into the boxes of organized religion or official science.
And this really gets us to the heart of the big debate among scholars today. Is Western esotericism a coherent, distinct, spiritual worldview, a unique way of seeing a magical, interconnected reality? Or is it just a historical grab bag of intellectual cast-offs, defined only by what it isn't?
But no matter how you define it, this so-called rejected knowledge has a seriously long and fascinating history. So let's just do a quick trip through time and see how these ideas have popped up over the centuries.
I mean, you can trace it all the way back to late antiquity with groups like the Gnostics, who believed salvation came through secret knowledge, or the Hermeticists, studying ancient Egyptian wisdom. Then, during the Renaissance, thinkers rediscovered these ideas and started blending them with Jewish Kabbalah and magic. Fast forward to the 19th century, and you see this huge explosion of occultism,
partly as a reaction to industrialization. And even more recently, these same ideas were a major fuel for the counterculture of the 60s and, of course, the New Age movement.
So if this stuff has always been the rejected knowledge, the hidden undercurrent, where does that leave it today?
Well, and this is maybe the most fascinating twist of all. What was once thrown out as superstition, or even prosecuted as heresy, is now a totally serious and respected academic field. I'm talking about world-renowned universities. The Sorbonne in Paris, University of Amsterdam, the University of Exeter. They now have dedicated departments and professors who study Western esotericism. They're mapping its profound and often very hidden influence on our culture, on our art, and our history.
And that really leaves us with a final question to think about. In our modern, scientific, and supposedly disenchanted world, why does this whole body of rejected knowledge, the search for secret wisdom and a magical reality, why does it continue to have such a powerful, enduring grip on our imagination?